Hi, my name is Cheung, one of the WASBE board member. My last video upload is September 2020. So I just now moved to mainland China from Hong Kong. And in here, I start to meet a lot of different people. As last week, I was in Hangzhou and meet some friends there, and also in touch with some very local music, some like a spoken music with Chinese instrument as a complement, and learn a lot of different way that the local people, how they see their authentic music. While I'm in here, I also meet a lot of different friends. So recently, I met a friend is from British, who been here even longer than me, and his name is called Nick Smith. His Mandarin, Chinese language, even better than me, and so localized. He married a Chinese woman and live in Beijing. He is original as a composer for orchestra music, for opera, for chorus, and for different kind of ensemble or even keyboard music. And he also as conductor in China to conduct professional orchestra, community band, and different choir as well. So he's been long in China and stay here and touch with a lot of the local cultural materials. So this time I just try to introduce one of his work. Later one is called very famous, called An American in Paris. But now he have a music for band. It's called An Englishman in Beijing. And while he stay in China, he learned so many, not only the language, but the cultural. And during he teach in different province, so he touched with different local music, which they see the different way as a foreigner. So like when a language we say like good morning, okay, but in Chinese it will turn to be morning good. So actually they have the same meaning, but when we see in a different angle, one's here and the Western one will be see from this side. So that makes it so interesting. So the music that he written is in a way after he moved to China, what he see the changing during the last 20 years. Actually, when I'm traveling in different area or different country, language or cultural background, and let us see the things in a different way. And this actually make life more interesting and also meaningful, Sometimes we need to crop or enjoy or appreciate the different life or their music in the other way. And this will become more colorful, not only one color. So let us enjoy the music written by Nick Smith and his music called An Englishman in Beijing. So he's going to give you some more idea how he composed this work, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Hello, my name is Nick Smith. I'd like to talk a little bit about a piece I wrote for Wind Band called An Englishman in Beijing. I think I'd like to just share with everyone a little bit about the Chinese elements in this piece, because they're not the normal kind of Chinese elements. I think if people think about a piece that's written by a Chinese composer or a piece about China, they would tend to think straight away of those very kind of Chinese folk song ideas or folk song related ideas or pentatonic scales or this kind of stuff. When I was writing this piece, I had a very different kind of idea. In fact, I wrote the piece for a band that I was working with, at the time, called the Beijing Municipal Youth Palace Wind Band. And I wrote it with them in mind. And I wanted to write a piece for them that was symphonic in nature, but also not too long. And I wanted to write something that was about Beijing, because there actually, surprisingly, isn't that much music that's specifically about Beijing. In fact, when you go looking for material, there are very few folk songs even that are actually Beijing folk songs. So I just came up with a different kind of plan altogether. And I thought, because I've lived in Beijing a long time, and I thought I'd just try to write down some of my experiences in Beijing, use those as a basis for creating some music. And I thought hopefully that would resonate with the people in the orchestra who have had basically the same experiences that I have had. So I think that the most extraordinary thing about Beijing over the last 25 years is how much it's grown and how it's changed from being a very low-rise city to having some of the most extraordinary high-rise buildings in the world. And that was my starting point in creating the opening music. I wanted to give that sense of enormous grandeur and skyscraper feeling, and also a really dynamic city. That's another thing that changed. Beijing was still, even when I first came to Beijing in 1996, it was still, it was definitely alive, but it wasn't anywhere as alive as it became in the following 20 years. Beijing's a really thriving, energetic place, and I wanted to convey some of that. And then I think that anybody who's spent any time in Beijing in the last 20 years would also remember there are two definite facets of Beijing life. One was, until the recent COVID outbreak, one was the pollution here that was pretty bad for a long time. And the other is the traffic. And I also try to include those elements in my piece. And so there's a whole section that actually combines that sense of choking pollution and also the traffic sounds. And that particular part of the piece I didn't even write a short score for. I just orchestrated it directly, and the traffic sounds actually are the traffic sounds that occurred on the afternoon that I was writing the piece. I just simply wrote down what I heard, including very nearly the time intervals between the horn sounds. So that's just a real, just a snapshot of something that actually happened in Beijing outside my window. And there are other elements that are Chinese, but they're not the sort of Chinese that maybe most people think about. Another thing that Beijing had during the 1990s and 2000s, up until the 2008 Olympics, was an enormous amount of construction. And that construction, you know, if you were sitting in any building in downtown Beijing, you could hear literally tens of thousands of workers using hammers to demolish buildings before putting up new, higher buildings. So there would be these gangs of workers, all with their hammers and their jackhammers, pounding on buildings with this kind of dong, 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 constant hammering sound. And sometimes these teams of hammers would align, and so you'd have like a building over there, a building over there being demolished, and a building over there being demolished. And there would be separate sounds, so it would all be a mess. But just occasionally, everything would line up, and for a few beats, you'd get these enormous, great thump, thump of the sound. And so I put that into my piece as well, because I thought this is a real part of Beijing, and this is what the kids in the band that I was thinking about this piece for, this is what they lived through as well. This is all a part of their childhood. So I just wanted something that would give them that sense. And of course, it's in the piece, it's not all there's this kind of recent man-made stuff. And another aspect of Beijing is the weather. And the weather did change a little with the pollution and the traffic and so on, but recently very much come back. What I remembered very clearly from my first summer in Beijing was the sudden thunderstorms that were just over and gone in a moment. I mean, there'd be no warning, and then there'd be very, very heavy rain, sometimes even lightning, and then gone, nothing there. and just the whole city would be cleaned up and gleaming and beautiful. And so I wanted to just include that thread in my music as well. And so there is a little section that is just a thunderstorm, and it happens very fast and it's gone in a moment. And the following section is more romantic, and I think that Beijing is, in fact, at least can be, a very romantic city. And I would also say that Beijing has a way of stopping the romance very suddenly, and I think that my music tries to give that sense as well. Right, suddenly it's over, and you're left feeling, oh, but wait, hang on, what happened? Where did it all go? But I think that's just a part of Beijing life too, and I think it's nothing, it's a characteristic of being here, at least in my experience. Of course, other people may have different experiences with that, but that was, it's an interesting part of being here. The very last part of the piece, I wrote to kind of echo somehow Chinese folk song style. It's not a Chinese folk song, but I tried the melody there. I wanted to give something that was proud, because I think this is an amazing city, and I think that that Beijing should have a hymn. I mean, Beijing, in fact, does have a hymn. It's called I Love Beijing Tiananmen. There's that melody that I do, in fact, use at the beginning of the piece. I quote from it. But that's really the only thing that I've found that Beijing specifically has. So I just wanted to create something with a little bit of feeling of pride, because I think this is a great city, and I think it could have more music written for it. I think, I hope that it will give a flavour. Also, other Chinese elements that are perhaps not so noticeable. I don't always use 4+4 to make 8-bar phrases in the piece. I am quite a lot influenced now by Chinese poetry, which uses odd numbers. It's usually 5 or 7. And that definitely influences my phrasing these days. And I think that those elements are also very strongly present in the piece. And also the part writing, which anybody who's spent time in Beijing will sometimes feel that life here can be a little bit unplanned. And so sometimes in the part writing, I just want to give a little sense of sometimes things are not exactly planned. There might be a big plan, but the details can sometimes seem a bit random. And I wanted to have that idea, that sense, as a mirror of what it looked like to me. That's my sense of Beijing. Anyway, I hope that sharing these little things can be helpful to people. I hope, very much hope that people will enjoy the piece. So thank you very much for listening to me talking about this music.
I hope you enjoy the music by Nick Smith, An Englishman in Beijing. The performance is performed by the Dunshan Wind Orchestra in Beijing, and the conductor is Adrian Schneider. Hopefully next time when I upload another link for the Chinese music will be composed by the local Chinese composer. And see you next time. Bye.